Fortress Mountain is one of the most unique lost ski resorts in North America. This incredible mountain hosts an amazing history dating back to the 1960s. Once a popular area for skiers and snowboarders alike, Fortress has been seemingly forgotten in time, lost to its own past. Today, we're going to embark on a comprehensive journey through the rich history of Fortress, from its early days to its rise, downfall, closure, and reopening attempts. So without further delay, let's get right into this video. Skiing on Fortress Mountain has a deep history running all the way back to the 1960s. Its story begins with one man, Arnold Choquette. A native-born Calgarian, Choquette spent over 10 years searching the mountains of Kananaskis for a spot to build a ski resort. Spending summers hiking and winters backcountry skiing, Choquette finally settled on a ridge right below Fortress Mountain. It was then that the Snow Ridge Ski Development Company was formed in 1965. The following year, an access road including a bridge was constructed up to the site. In 1967, the company announced the construction of a new double chairlift, a T-bar, and a $2 million day lodge. Featuring a hotel, the supremely unique lodge was designed by architect J.K. English and originally was supposed to be one of several similar buildings, all to be connected via a series of sky bridges. Utilizing a hyperbolic paraboloid design, this building was truly a masterpiece of architecture and is perhaps the greatest ski lodge ever to be built in Canada. The chairlift was constructed by Alpine Lift, or Doppelmayr, and was one of the earliest Doppelmayr vintage chairlifts installed in Western Canada. The T-bar was a one-of-a-kind design, running in a diamond pattern up and over the mountain, serving both sides of the ridge. Now, despite the best intentions of the Snow Ridge Ski Company, Snow Ridge did not open in 1967 due to construction delays. That summer, the resort added a second beginner's T-bar, providing access to the much-needed beginner terrain. The resort finally opened in January of 1968. There was a lot to love about the newly opened resort. Both hotel and ski guests praised the design of the futuristic ski lodge. The skiing itself was incredible, the lifts were modern, and the views were spectacular. However, guests had one major complaint about Snow Ridge, the horrific access road. You see, back in the 1960s, the paved Highway 40 we all know and love did not exist. Instead, the only access was through a series of decommissioned gravel logging roads. With other competitors, such as Norquay or Sunshine boasting paved roads all the way up, many guests preferred to make the drive somewhere else. Initially, the Snow Ridge Ski Development Company was owned by shareholders. In 1969, Greyhound Leasing and Financial of Canada Limited purchased a 15% interest in the company. Greyhound indicated that they would be interested in potential further development of the ski resorts. In 1969, the company began offering heli ski tours using Snow Ridge as a base camp. Using a Bell 205A-1 helicopter, skiing tours were offered around various glaciers. It was thus proclaimed that the jet age has come to Snow Ridge. Later that year, looking for more space, the iconic hyperbolic paraboloid lodge was expanded on 4 of the 5 sides of the building. While the original plan called for additional buildings, management opted for the cheaper route, installing 4 additions with basements. Snow Ridge grew in popularity, though not as much as its competitor resorts. It was here that management made a mistake. To raise funds, the resort offered lifetime seasons passes for $1,000. Adjusted for inflation today, this would be $8,071.16 in today's currency. This lifetime pass gave the holder benefits which I won't go through, but you can read them here. In March of 1970, Snow Ridge announced the addition of a second chairlift. The proposed Kananaskis chairlift would have been approximately where the current Canadian chair was later installed. In October of 1970, Greyhound Leasing and Finance Company took complete control of Snow Ridge, though they leased out operations to the Bruceport Transportation Company. All planned capital expenditures, including the new Kananaskis chairlift, were cancelled, though the company declared that there would be future investments made. Greyhound began running weekend buses from various locations in Calgary to the ski resort. It was around this time that the access road began to be a major problem. In 1971, the government promised the resort that 30 miles of the 36 miles would be paved sometime. Looking to cut costs, the ski resort operated weekends only for the 1971 to 1972 ski season. By July of 1972, the Alberta Supreme Court ruled that snowbirds be put up for judicial sale. The resort owed more than $1 million to the Business Development Bank and had never made a profit. The ski resort blamed the lack of profit from the access road. Snowbirds remained closed until the summer of 1974, when the famed Aspen Skiing Company purchased 50% of the resort from the Business Development Bank. By then, the provincial government had agreed to pave and maintain 30 miles of the access road, with the last 6 miles under the resort's management. In an effort to rebrand the resort, Aspen renamed Snowbirds to Fortress Mountain. Aspen also had to contend with the lifetime seasons passes that were sold under previous management. Aspen simply chose not to honor them, angering many who had purchased them. Now, Aspen quickly sold the ski lodge to Ski Vest Limited, who owned and ran Fairmont Hot Springs Resort and Ski Area. The group was headed by Joe Couillard. Aspen's ski company created a smaller entity called Fortress Mountain Resorts Limited to run the resort. In 1975, to expand the skiable terrain, a new Doppelmayr triple chair was installed, servicing expansion terrain. This lift loaded right near the bottom of the beginner T-bar, making access relatively easy. The resort also added a separate staff housing and rental shop unit right next to the main lodge. The main lodge was remodeled with new restaurants, shops, and an outdoor pool, while the administrative offices were moved to the new building. Aspen kept up with running buses from Calgary to Fortress. It was around this time that Fortress, looking to rebrand their image, started running the beginner T-bar completely free of charge, as well as offering select free beginner lessons. This program was met with huge success, with many people learning how to ski at Fortress. Additionally, around this time, Fortress started hosting many freestyle and racing events. All of this built an incredible loyal following at Fortress over the next few decades. In 1976, additional black runs were opened on the front side. In keeping with Aspen's grooming tradition, Fortress boasted 3 modern Tiacol Packmasters, ensuring world-class grooming. The hotel had become nationally recognized, and the ski resort experienced huge visitation. This was truly the golden era of Fortress. However, in February of 1976, a woman suffered injuries after the haul rope of the beginner T-bar derailed, falling on her. High winds were reportedly blamed for the accident. The woman sued the resort and won $15,000 in 1978. By 1977, the resort had begun to install a snowmaking system along critical runs to aid in early season openings. A complete system was proposed that would have covered all of the front side. It was also in 1977 when the Aspen Ski Corporation sold a 40% stake in their firm to 20th Century Fox Film Corp. This deal meant that much of Fortress was now controlled by 20th Century Holdings. In 1978, the British Columbian government agreed to sign a 40-year lease with Aspen-owned Fortress Mountain Resorts Limited to develop skiing on Blackcomb Mountain. Blackcomb opened in 1980, and it was operated by Fortress until 1986. Aspen installed a new Doppelmayr double in Fortress in 1978, marking the last true expansion the resort undertook. Opening up the backside, the lift serviced 4 existing runs and opened others, eliminating a long runout. By 1979, Joe Couillard of Ski Vest Co., who owned and operated the lodge, had received preliminary approval from the provincial government to develop a $10 million alpine village at Fortress. This would have given the mountain 100 condo units, an expanded base lodge, swimming pools, and tennis courts, which would have transformed the mountain into a year-round destination. The Fortress Village was not the only one proposed. There were an additional 3 proposed villages in the Kananaskis Valley. This rush on development was all boosted by Calgary's bid on the 1988 Winter Olympics. However, by 1980, the government had decided that no condo units would be built anywhere in the Kananaskis Valley, which essentially quashed Couillard's dream. It was around this time that the government started to get serious about developing a new ski resort for the Olympic Games. It had become obvious that Fortress Mountain did not have the qualifications to host the Games. Proposals for 3 ski resorts in Mount Sparrowhawk, Mount Allen, and Mount Shark, as well as 3 new alpine villages, all came to the table. While no condos would be present, the alpine villages would have hundreds of rental units. There was even a plan in 1982 to build and link all 4 ski resorts via a series of trams and chairlifts. Fortress itself had expansion plans, including the replacement of the original curved T-bar and the Farside Double, as well as a new base at the bottom of the mountain, with a 2-stage lift system that would bring skiers to Fortress Village. This would have eliminated the 8-kilometer access road, though obviously this never came to fruition. By 1983, the provincial government had indicated that they themselves would develop a ski resort on Mount Ellen. Now, there's a lot I could say about the development of Nikiska, but I won't go too deep here. I will, however, say that no other resort operator was happy with this decision. Coming off of a good snow year in 1980, Fortress experienced low skier visits for 1981 and 1982. However, manager Bill Williams claimed that Fortress had found a niche by offering affordable lift tickets, and that this market would always have a place in the Alberta ski scene, regardless of the new resort. In 1986, Joe Couillard, who had previously owned the lodge, purchased Aspen's 50% share in the resort. Charlie Locke, owner of Lake Louise, purchased the Federal Business Development Bank's 50% share. Under the new management, Fortress began actively marketing itself as the most affordable mountain to ski, which did help raise skier visit numbers somewhat. This is best summarized in this 1986 article, which says, "No glossy trail maps, just photocopies. A $20 bill will buy a lift ticket with change returned, and there are no crowds to contend with." Fortress also embraced the new sport of snowboarding with open arms. At a time when snowboarding was widely shunned by other ski resorts, many Calgarian boarders flocked to Fortress, partly due to the terrain layout and partly due to the management's stance. The 1987 to 1988 winter season was extremely warm, which caused Fortress to only open for a handful of weeks. Additionally, the 1988 Winter Olympic Games ensured that ski traffic to Fortress was minimal. Other ski operators faced similar conditions. By 1991, Charlie Locke had purchased Joe Couillard's 50% share in Fortress, making him the sole owner of the resort. This period started the rapid decline of Fortress Mountain. Compared to other resorts, even Nikiska, Fortress struggled to attract skiers to its aging facilities. By 1992, Charlie Locke had announced that he was planning to construct 25 ski-in, ski-out units, as well as a new chairlift on the far side. However, Locke's focus was the construction of a golf course at Wintergreen in 1992, putting the Fortress expansion on the back burner. Locke told the press that he intended to start construction of the new lift and townhome units in 1994. By 1995, Charlie Locke had taken control of Nikiska, purchasing it from Rocky Mountain Skiing Incorporated. Looking to cut overhead, Locke merged the operations of Fortress and Nikiska under one manager. Locke did end up building 6 townhome units in 1995. Cat skiing on Fortress was also introduced in 1996, which perhaps was foreshadowing to the future. By 1997, Charlie Locke had become increasingly frustrated by the Alberta provincial government's bureaucratic red tape on development in the Kananaskis Valley. Locke had planned to sell his built units as condos, which was subject to a lengthy government review. Locke eventually announced that he was done with Alberta and purchased Snow Valley, which became Fernie. Locke's relationship with the government degraded when he threatened to close Fortress and Nikiska in 1999. This came after the provincial government shut off Fortress's water, claiming that Locke's sewage lagoon overflowed with snowmelt. Nonetheless, Locke continued to build up resorts to the Canadian Rockies with his purchase of Kimberley in 1998. By May of 1999, the provincial government had announced that there would be no further consideration for development in the Kananaskis Valley. This essentially put an end to Locke's plan for condos and expanded ski terrain at Fortress. Locke responded to this by diversifying his assets, purchasing Mont Sainte Anne in Quebec. Now, around 2001, Locke's Resorts of the Canadian Rockies company began to crumble. While I won't get into the details of RCR's near liquidation, I will have a video on this topic coming out soon. All you need to know for now is that oil billionaire N. Murray Edwards purchased RCR, shuttering Wintergreen in 2003. Now, the winters of 2001 to 2002 and 2002 to 2003 were extremely poor. Every major Alberta ski resort faced warmer than usual temperatures, which resulted in a significant drop in skier visits. After closing Wintergreen following the 2002 to 03 ski season, RCR announced that Fortress would only operate on weekends, then, changing their minds, announced that Fortress would permanently close. RCR also announced that Nikiska was likely to close within the next few years. However, RCR changed course later that year, announcing that they would keep Fortress operational. Additionally, RCR announced that they were in talks with the provincial government to expand skiable terrain on Fortress within the next 2 years. Srinko Amaral also came on as the new general manager. However, after an application for a provincial tourism grant was denied to Fortress, RCR announced the closure of the resort in April of 2004. According to General Manager Neil Jackson, "We cannot justify operating a resort that has lost in excess of $1 million cash over the last 2 years." After closing the ski resort, RCR initially proposed building a year-round environmental education center at Fortress. However, by September of 2005, RCR announced that the resort had been sold to former general manager Srinko Amaral. Amaral created the Banff Railroad Company to operate the resort. By February of 2006, Amaral had reopened limited skiing on Fortress through the Canadian Chair. Burst pipes in the basements of the lodge had created unexpected damages, though the damage was fixed that summer. Amaral purchased Lake Louise's retired Glacier Triple, which he reportedly wanted to use to replace the Farside lift. By September of 2006, the provincial government had ordered Amaral to stop selling seasons passes to Fortress after informing the public that the hill may not fully be in operation by its December 1st opening date. The government told Amaral to stop advertising services it may not be able to provide. By November of 2006, the government condemned the bridge to the resort, cutting off all access to the mountain. Amaral was confident that he could be able to reopen by January of 2007 and submitted a new operating proposal to the government, as well as promising to fix the bridge. Fortress did not open in 2007, leaving seasons pass holders angry. However, Amaral kept on promising that Fortress would be operational for the 2007 to 2008 ski season. By September of 2007, Amaral had landed in legal trouble after he was accused of fraudulently using credit card information to pay off debts from the operation of the ski hill. 1 month later, the provincial government cancelled the ski hill's lease over Amaral's failure to repair the bridge, along with unpaid taxes. Amaral sued the provincial government, which went nowhere. In 2009, scenes of the movie Inception were filmed at Fortress. Warner Brothers built a new one-lane bridge, and sections of the road were repaired. Though Amaral announced the resort might open for the 2009 ski season, it ultimately did not happen. In 2010, Amaral sold the resort to Fortress Mountain Holdings. The new owners created Cape Out Cat Skiing in 2011, which offered guided cat tours in and around the old ski hill. In 2013, a new resort area structure plan was created and subsequently approved in 2014. By 2020, to raise capital, the owners had begun trucking water off the land to be sold. I visited Fortress back in 2020 and 2022. I was struck by the natural beauty of the resort and the striking location. While Fortress didn't have a big vertical drop, the resort offered quite an impressive selection of terrain. Unfortunately, the mountain has not been kind to the iconic base lodge. The 4 basements are either flooded or completely moldy. After visiting the mountain, I really don't know what's next for Fortress. I can only hope that this iconic Albertan gem can reopen for skiers and snowboarders once again. Fortress Mountain essentially was divided up into 3 sections: the front side, the back side, and the far side. For our purpose, let's start by discussing the front side. The front side had some of Fortress's most recognizable terrain and was serviced by a number of lifts. On the looker's left, the Canadian Triple Chairlift ascended some fairly steep terrain. There was a small parking lot at the bottom of the Canadian, though skiers could also take the short beginner T-bar to the base lodge, where there was another parking lot. The beginner T-bar serviced a short green run. I wouldn't necessarily call it the best beginner learning hill, as you probably would get some advanced skiers using the runout. From the lodge, the curved T-bar south was the next main lift. This lift really was quite unique, as it ran in a diamond shape up and over the ridge. The curved T-bar south serviced notably the garden run, which was probably a wide open enjoyable green cruiser. Apart from this, the curved south T-bar gives access to the backside, but more on that in a minute. Moving up the ridge, we can see that the Canadian Triple serviced the majority of the terrain. Fortress had a run on the ridge called Ridge Run that served as access to all the front side as well as the majority of the backside. While you could access the garden run from Ridge Run, I have to imagine that most skiers would take the short blue raceway trail. Starting lookers left to right, let's analyze the blacks. Friars Tuck and Palisade Park were 2 black runs to the skiers' right of the Canadian. Friars Tuck looks like it required a short hike, while Palisade Park looks like it was accessible from the backside chair. Both of these runs would have been mogul bumps. The Watch Me run right under the Canadian chair and was moguled. Watch Me looks like it had some unique natural terrain features as well. Additionally, the narrow tree-lined portcullis run right beside Watch Me. Next, we come to first, second, third, and fourth chute. Most of these runs were apparently regularly groomed. There was also a small halfpipe near the bottom of fourth chute, and apparently a small rope tow. Alright, let's move on to the backside, starting with the curved T-bar north. This side of the T-bar provided access from the far side chair back to the main face. There was also a shorter black run called Rampart. As this run was fairly out of the way, I have to imagine that it was usually pretty quiet. There are a handful of blue trails in this area, all serviced by one or both of the T-bar unloads. It's somewhat hard to piece together how this section all skied, but it looks like it was a solid intermediate terrain pod. Let's move up to the backside chair. This was Fortress's newest chairlift, built in 1980. This lift serviced somewhat easier terrain than the Canadian did, with notable runs such as Wall Street, roller coaster, and enchanted forest. There were a few black runs such as Harry's, Tight Pride 1, and Tight Pride 2. These runs were directly serviced by the backside chair. Burnout was not, and I have to imagine that this made the trail a lot less busy. While none of these runs were super long, it looks like a fairly interesting terrain layout. Now let's move to the far side chair. At 1.15 kilometers in length, this chair is by far the longest at Fortress. It apparently also was the coldest and probably the sketchiest chair out of them all. Canterbury Trail is your typical road turned green ski out. This run provided access to pretty much all the terrain up here, and it ends at the backside chair, though it looks like you could get all the way down to the far side chair if you really wanted to. The Jolly Jester Blue cuts through the terrain and is the easiest way to get back to the far side. There were quite a few tree skiing areas here, including Damelan, New Gateway, and the Glades. Devil's Gulch in particular had a really unique natural halfpipe that was very popular. There were 3 main blue trails, which were Taint, Getaway, and Pitchfork. I have to imagine that at least one of these was groomed, while the others were probably more natural. The entire farside area looks like it really catered to advanced skiers, and these blues do appear to be more on the steeper side. Finally, Coliseum, Cauldron, Goodnight, and Sherwood Forest serviced trails right below the farside chair. These runs were fairly steep, but quite in the open. You know, the loss of Fortress really makes me sad. I believe the downfall started in the 1980s when the owners stopped making investments in the resort. Fortress had many chances to expand, but for one reason or another, it didn't. Had Fortress kept modernizing and expanding, even without selling condos, I do believe that the business could have been a sustainable day-use ski area in the long run. Ultimately, I do hope that the new owners are able to reopen the mountain, but as every year goes by, I have less and less hope that a reopening will happen. If you made it this far in the video, thank you so much for watching. This video has taken me so long to create, and I'd really appreciate it if you subscribed. It does mean a lot. Again, thanks for watching The Lost Resorts. Until next time, this is Skier72.